You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone, you're listening and watching the Cricket Podcast, and today Max and I are joined by one of the owners of the Major League Cricket team, the Seattle Orcas. Welcome to the show, Soma Somasegar. How are you doing?
Doing well, Ross. Thank you and Max for having me on this podcast. It's a pleasure to get a chance to have this conversation with you both. And congratulations on everything that you're doing for the world of cricket.
You're too kind. I think we're like a big charity organisation when it comes to cricket, aren't we? Really, Max? That's we're doing things for the greater good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fighting the good fight for cricket worldwide. Soma, could you tell us a bit about yourself? Because you're involved. You're one of the owners of the Orcas, but people might not have heard of you before.
So I sort of grew up in the world of technology, Ross. Started at Microsoft. When I came out of college. And ended up spending almost 27 years at Microsoft, right? Okay. Working on a variety of platform products and technologies kind of thing, mostly building and scaling some businesses at Microsoft. But after about 27 years or so, decided to change tracks and thought I'll try my hand at being a venture capitalist. Okay, so for the last 8 years, I've been one of the managing partners at Medina Ventures here in Seattle, where we invest in early stage and mid-stage technology companies in the US. Okay, and then about 5-6 years ago, started to think about sports a little more seriously, and got an opportunity to invest both in MLS or Major League Soccer in the US. My wife and I are sort of part owners in Seattle Sounders. And then came the MLC opportunity, and I said, hey, this is near and dear to my heart, particularly having been born and brought up in India, where you sort of grew up with a tiny little radio receiver near your ears to sort of hear the ball by ball commentary for 5 days during a test match kind of thing. Having grown up in that world, the love for cricket has always been there. And when I saw that there is an opportunity to bring that sport to this country in some big way kind of thing, I got excited about it, and I said, hey, let's see how we can participate in this and how we can bring it to our hometown, which is Seattle.
Nice. So, well, first of all, just say congratulations on getting to the final of the inaugural Major League Cricket. Didn't quite make it all the way, but it's pretty tough when you're running into the
rub
likes
that salt in the wound there, man.
Well, it's pretty hard running into the likes of Rashid Khan, isn't it, in and star-studded lineups like that. But
I think the challenge is when you have Nicholas Pooran have probably one of his best, if not his best, day on the field. You just appreciate his game and move on. There is nothing literally anybody can do when such a thing happens kind of thing. I did think that our team played very well as we went into batting first kind of thing in the finals. But Nicholas Pooran was just out of the world that day, and kudos to him and to the MI team for that performance that day.
Yeah, we say that he had a day out. Typically how we
yeah. Wouldn't have wanted to run into him doing anything on that particular day, but obviously, regardless of the result. I mean, what were your impressions of the tournament overall? Obviously, there was a lot of will it, won't it in the lead up and everything, but eventually got going. So, what did you make of it all?
I think first of all, we didn't know what to expect. Let me start by saying that. Okay, so with hindsight, I would say the season one was a phenomenal success, in that it exceeded, all of my and all of our expectations kind of thing. I'll just give you some sort of, data points to back that up kind of thing, right? Most of the games were sold out. Okay. The caliber of the sport, I thought was pretty good kind of thing. We were able to recruit some fantastic international players. I think the more important thing was the local players shine through really well in a lot of the teams, which is a fantastic validation of the homegrown talent that is being nurtured and cultivated and grown kind of thing. I think there's still probably room to grow, but I think for a first season, I thought the local players did really, really well. Okay, you hear about people or you talk to people who flown 3,000 miles, or who driven 800 miles to come watch a game, and saying that hey, I've been dreaming for this day for the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? Because when I decided US is going to be my home, I thought that like maybe my days of watching a live cricket match are behind me kind of thing, right? And being able to watch international cricket here in the US on your home ground, people just the amount of outpouring love and support that we got was just fantastic, right? And then you see like, hey, people from 87 different countries were watching these games live. We had CBS, live telecast a couple of the matches in CBS prime time, right? So you see the interest, you see the excitement from different angles kind of thing. I thought season 1 was amazingly successful. Having said that, season 1 is season 1. I think there is a lot more that we can do to build upon that in successive years or subsequent years to be able to further make this like a phenomenal league and a phenomenal sport.
Yeah, I think when you said around the playing quality being pretty good, and actually it was pretty good, right? I think sometimes you see some of the other tournaments in the world, like the ILT 20, kind of started with a bit of a whimper, right? It wasn't really kind of up to what you were looking for. But I thought this was going pound for pound with something like the South Africa 20 and that kind of stuff. Actually, you had the big name players, and you also what I found was maybe the US players actually did surprise me, if I'm perfectly honest. There was that bit where they did outperform that some of the overseas players by a hell of a long way. And I think there's a testament to what Major League Cricket and kind of minor league cricket has done to actually bring some of those players through and give them this opportunity.
I'll tell you one other thing that I thought I at least observed it in multiple teams, if not all the teams, is like, there's always this worry about like, hey, who's going to get like, the most playing time and who's going to be like, treated, differently or well kind of thing. And I thought like, all the teams did a phenomenal job of saying like, hey, we got one team, we got one set of players. Yeah, some of them are international players and some of them are local players kind of thing, right? But we are going to create a team composition and a team environment on the field where we are going to treat everybody, fairly and right and what is required for the sport kind of thing. I thought that sort of, that culture and that ethos was really helpful. And to be fair, the local players did step up and do a really good job. So it sort of validated like the thinking and it just became the norm.
I think that is going to be something to be proud of. Am I right in saying you're one of the first investors into Major League Cricket, right? Alongside Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, for those of you who don't know. Kind of, what made you get involved, or was it the boy kind of listening to the little transistor radio, kind of there, just being like, you know what, I can do tech, I've got some money now, and I love cricket, so why not put all of those things together and make a cake?
I think you're right, Ross, in that like, hey, the boy that is still within you that was listening to like the small radio receiver set for a ball by ball commentary, that's still there. But I think what happened for me at least was like when IPL started. Okay, this is now you're talking about 10, 12, 13 years ago kind of thing, right? You encountered a format that was starting to get popular, very popular, right? That is a 3.5 hour, 4 hour format, not a 1 day format, not a 5 day format kind of thing. Okay. And you look at the US audience. First of all, US is the world's largest sports media market. Okay. People here love to watch sports, follow sports, are rabid fans of sports. All good things here kind of thing, right? And no matter what the sport is. And you sort of see like, hey, but people's attention span are also finite, particularly in today's day and age kind of thing, right? People love like, a 2 to 4 hour sport as opposed to a 8 hour sport or a 40 hour sport kind of thing. Okay. So when this format came up, like, some of us here started thinking about like, hey, wouldn't it be nice someday for this format to come up here in the US, right? And I think it was now 5 years or 6 years ago kind of thing, when I heard that these two guys, Samir and Vijay, who had started like, Willow, which is the sort of the default, cricket broadcast, platform here in the US kind of thing. When these two guys left that and said like, hey, we are starting to think about like, what could we do for the sport in this country kind of thing. You put the two together and I said like, hey, here is an opportunity that we should get in now. And at that time, we didn't know what the hell we were going to do, right? We knew that like, hey, there's a bunch of us that are like-minded people that are wanting to bring the sport in some major way into this country. What form, when, how, right now, all things to be worked out kind of thing. So both Satya and I got excited about it at that time and said like, hey, we are going to lean in and we are going to participate and we are going to help shape how this thing is going to sort of, evolve and sort of, take roots in this country kind of thing. And I think the pandemic, was a 2-3 year what I call hiatus or sort of distraction kind of thing for a lot of these things, including our own, Major League Cricket efforts kind of thing. But what we did, which I think in hindsight has been good, is we used the time that we got to say, like, hey, let's go put some building blocks in place. Okay. Because the reason why we are doing this is like, not because we want to get like 3 seasons done and then life is fine kind of thing, right? We are really thinking about like, hey, do we have an opportunity here to bring the sport and make the sport a mainstream sport in the US in the coming years and decades, right? We sort of want to be here for the long run and want to make sure that this sport takes roots and really expands and becomes, a fifth sport or a sixth sport as a sport of choice for the next generation kids and beyond. To say like, hey, I'm looking at like, I'm interested in playing sports. I've got like, 5 options or 6 options. Let me pick, and cricket should be one of those. And there is no reason why cricket can't be one of those, right? So
Absolutely.
when you take that kind of a long-term view, we want to make sure that like, hey, we are putting out the best product. We are putting out the building blocks. And when I say the building blocks kind of thing, it's things like, hey, let's go set up cricket academies around the country. Okay, so that kids, during school or after school or during summer can come and learn the sport, can come and try their hand at the sport kind of thing. We also set up a minor league, and today there are about 26, 28 teams, okay, that are part of the minor league in the US. And we've been running the minor league tournament for the last, actually 3 years. This is the third season that's currently happening kind of thing, right? Because we think like, hey, you want to, cultivate local talent. You want to give them the opportunity to get trained in the sport, to be able to play the sport, to be able to start competing professionally, and then get ready to participate in the major league kind of thing, right? So those building blocks, I think, are going to serve us really, really well for the short, medium, and long term here.
That's obviously, well, it paints a really, really exciting picture, really, of what sort of the plan is and what could happen. I think, cricket tried to make its mark in the US a while back. I think it was probably 2007-ish, around that time. And obviously that's, we're talking before T20 cricket was really a thing, when it first tried to be brought over as a product. So I mean, what do you think is going to make the difference this time around? Is it the attention spans? Is it the fact that this time you have that structure in place, maybe where you've got the building blocks, as you put it, to try and kick on? Or is America maybe now just more ready for cricket than it was before? Is it the global recognition of leagues like the IPL that have sort of bring it into the consciousness a bit more?
I think there are a couple of things here, Max. I think the first thing is like, though I mentioned that like, hey, our aspiration is to have cricket be a mainstream sport kind of thing. Today, the audience and the viewership and the interest is mostly from what I call the cricket loving or cricket playing diaspora countries. Okay. So the one good news is in the last 10-15 years, that population has exploded immensely. Okay. So you have like, millions of households of people who naturally follow cricket because of where they are coming from kind of thing. And that's in this country, right? So you got what I call a critical mass of people that are excited about watching the sport day one. So that's one thing that has changed. The second thing that has changed is like, the format and the time for a particular game or a match kind of thing, right? It's now, as I said, it's less than 4 hours, right? Which makes it like, the why now for the US really, really attractive. You put these two together and you see like, how the international cricket is sort of getting more mind share, right? You take all these things and say like, hey, now seems like the right time to give it a full-fledged effort kind of thing, right? I think in the past, like you said, like, I think in the 2000s, some people tried. In the 1990s, some people tried. For a variety of reasons that I don't know that I can fully articulate or understand, those things didn't take off kind of thing. But I feel like, hey, for the things that I mentioned just now, this might be the right time to get this off the ground in a big way and then build on top of that. And we didn't want to just do that. And that's why I talked about the building blocks kind of thing, right? We want to start setting up like, the infrastructure in place. Oh, that's another thing I should tell you. One of the things that we are looking at, we have to do and we are doing is like, setting up cricket stadiums around the country, right? There are enough infrastructure facilities for this sport to be played as a first-class sport in several parts of the country, right? So there is some more heavy lifting that we'll have to do in a country like the US relative to South Africa or relative to India or relative to some other, cricket playing countries kind of thing, where the infrastructure already exists and you can sort of co-opt that. So we'll have to do that work, but we are willing to do that work and committed to doing that work. So the things that I talked about, plus the fact that we got a large number of what I call business leaders who are investors in the league and by extension in these different teams kind of thing, both with the capital resources, the ability to think about how to get something started from the ground and get it to some scale. You bring that execution capability, that financial capability, and the things that are happening that make the sport reach a critical mass today. We feel like this is the right time for this to be happening.
Mm-hmm. And on that front, so you're a Major League Cricket kind of part owner, you own part of the Seattle Orcas as well. I mean, being one of those owners, that sounds like a pretty good job to us. But what does that entail on, say, a week-to-week basis or a month-to-month basis from your perspective?
So I would say, in Seattle, take Seattle Orcas for example, right? There are a handful of us that are co-owners of the league, and we are all people that have known each other for the last many years. So we have a level of comfort of working together to create something. But to be sort of more specific, there are two of us that are spending a considerable amount of time helping Seattle Orcas get off the ground, right? I'm doing that, I'm doing that mostly on the business side kind of thing. And my a partner of mine, a co-owner of in Seattle Orcas, Sanjay Parthasarathi, he himself played cricket, first-class cricket. He used to play for the region and the zone and the state in India that he grew up with, or we all grew up with kind of thing. And so he understands the sport really well, and he's sort of driving the sports side of the equation kind of thing, right? So the two of us are spending a fair amount of time getting this off the ground. But like anything else, what we want to do is hire a professional management team that understands the sport, that understands what it means to build a world-class sports franchise in cricket, that builds a team and sort of a fan base and everything else that needs to go with that to make it a very successful franchise. And we want to hand the keys to the professional management team in the coming months and coming years kind of thing, right? We are just helping, get started and making sure that we can put a fantastic team in place to take the ball forward.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Your investor group, there's a tech angle to it, right? So from that perspective, could we see new applications of technology in the way you're going to actually run the Seattle Orcas? And what is your approach to kind of data analytics? We're big fans of data on this show, but the world of technology, surely there must be new applications of that for the world of cricket.
I would say a couple of things, Ross. First of all, that's a great question kind of thing, and I would broadly speak about it in three buckets kind of thing. Okay, one is as we think about the building out a stadium for the Seattle Orcas kind of thing, we don't want to think about how do we bring in technology to be to bear at the forefront kind of thing. For example, right, we want to make sure that there are enough sensors in the field that when you as a fan walk into the stadium, that you get a highly personalized fan experience. Okay, when you're watching the game, when you're sort of enjoying the game with your friends and family kind of thing, right? We think there is interesting ways to keep the engagement levels super interesting and high. Okay,
you can press mute to one of the annoying fans that are sitting next to you, or get him to put his shirt back on or something.
But think about hey, when you walk in, based on your preferences and who you are, if you start getting personalized content and personalized experiences, that would be super exciting for you as a fan. Okay. The second thing is data. We want to be as data driven as we realistically can. Okay, both in terms of identifying the players, but more importantly enabling the players to get real-time feedback or near real-time feedback to be able to understand what is going really well and what can be improved and how can the team come together to deliver a superior performance kind of thing, right? That means a bunch of what I call IoT or Internet of Things devices, sensors, data. How do you use ML, machine learning and AI on the data that you can collect to be able to provide both insights, analytics, as well as predictive capabilities that players can look at and the coaching staff can look at and decide how to change the strategy or how to sort of learn from what is happening kind of thing. The third thing is the consumption experience itself, particularly with the world, making good progress on virtual reality or augmented reality, are there opportunities for people to think about how they can consume watching the game, whether they are in the stadium or whether they are away from the stadium, kind of thing, in a more immersive way, with data that's available to them as they are watching the game, that they can easily sort of pick and choose and decide what they're going to engage with, and how do they stay in touch with their friends and family who may be geographically together or geographically dispersed. I think there is a variety of things that we can think about, right? So I think there's a lot of technology applications that we can keep in mind as we move forward here, in terms of providing a great experience both for the players and the coaching staff and for the fans.
I think that sounds actually really, really interesting. And I think also, if you can do something better than when it does on English TV at the moment, where they bring up the WinViz predictor, we want to can that. We want to get rid of that.
I think any sort of competition to, I mean, data when it comes to the data side of things as a fan watching cricket in this country, it's basically a monopoly, right? CricViz own all the data, and they have a deal with Sky, they have a deal with England, all the Hawkeye data, all of that stuff is all controlled by these companies. So I mean, I'd say have at it, get out there, disrupt it, and let's see some new stuff. That would be really really exciting from our point of view.
But like any other domain, right, you're going to have what I call data aggregators, okay, that want to monetize the data, and you'll have to figure out how you work with them in a economic sense, that in an economic way that makes sense both for them, because they've done the hard work to collect the data, and for you as the consumer of the data. But I also think more and more in all of these domains, including sports, I think you're going to see a set of what I call public data sets that are available, that people are going to curate and you can get access to. And then there's going to be some private data sets that you'll have to pay for. But I think that's part of the nature of how data is going to fuel the new economy in every domain, including sports. And so I think there are precedents for how we can work through that, and how we can get more data coming into the public data domain in a way that is curated and that is trustworthy.
Yeah, I mean, I know from our point of view, if there were an opportunity for some sort of subscription, like for all of that, ball by ball level data and all that stuff, we would be on it pretty quickly. I think it's certainly, and it's an exciting prospect. So I mean, thinking about, I guess the next few years, obviously you said at the top, like it's been a really positive first year, and obviously there's more to do, but it's been it's gone surprisingly well, I think, and the engagement was massive. I mean, what's the plan for the next few years for sort of Major League Cricket and Seattle Orcas? What are you focusing on? Obviously, you've got the stadium is one aspect, but where do you see it going in the near future?
One of the things that I should talk about, Max, is the reason why we are excited about Seattle Orcas and having cricket in Seattle, in addition to many other things. The one thing that is unique or differentiated, in Seattle, and I'm sure there are other parts of the world that can claim something similar, is we've got probably the most active fan base. Okay, very, very vibrant, very loud, very loyal fan base for all sports in Seattle. If you look at take Seattle Sounders or Seattle Kraken or Seattle Seahawks, right? Or the Seattle Mariners, right? Pick any sport, the fan base is very, very tight and loyal and loud for Seattle. Okay, There must be something in the air or water for that kind of fan base. That is
it's the team names. All the team names are top tier. Yeah. That's what it is.
Maybe that's what it is. So we are hoping that hey, we'll get a similar kind of love and support from the fan base here for cricket. But it is hard to really activate that in full force if you're not playing any games locally. Okay, and today we don't play games for the Major League in Seattle because we don't have a stadium, right? So the stadium is going to be immensely important for us to get up and running in the next couple of years, okay? So that we can play games locally. People can walk down the street or take a tube down to the park, or drive down to the park and be able to watch with their friends and family. That's very, very critical and important for us as well as for other teams in the league. And I think so that's a priority. The second thing that's happening is, I don't know if you're aware of this, the World Cup next year is going to be jointly hosted by the Caribbean and the US kind of thing. Okay. I always say that, like, hey, as much as we can play, like, games here, and, we'll do major league, season every year kind of thing, having, some of the international players and the international tournaments happening here will make awareness, higher. Okay.
Yep.
Will give the chance for more people to observe what is going on and maybe fall in love or get excited about it kind of thing, right? So having that international thing, I think, is good. And I'm so glad that it's happening next year in the US. The third thing that is, still a few years away kind of thing, there is a talk about, like, hey, is cricket going to be a part of the Olympics, particularly the 2028 time frame, right? And the 2028 Olympics is going to happen in the US in LA. So having cricket be part of that kind of a sports platform is going to be immensely helpful, right? So these are some of the things that we are sort of thinking about, like, hey, building the infrastructure, being able to have, home games and away games, being able to bring in more international players and host some international, tournaments. It's all about gearing up, or it's all about driving more awareness and energy for the sport in this country. In parallel, we'll have to start thinking about, like, hey, how do we take these cricket academies and then, like, go into the schools, so that in elementary school and middle schools, that kids do have a chance to play cricket, to learn cricket, to watch cricket kind of thing, right? So that's ground roots or grassroots effort is something that we'll have to be doing in parallel. So those are some of the things that we are thinking about, in addition to, like, ratcheting up the caliber of the major league sport, cricket sport, every year that goes by.
So it sounds to me like you've got the right interest with the right financial backing coming in at the right time with the right opportunity. And I mean, you don't need to be a venture capitalist to know that that's a good thing, right?
But
Max,
at the end of the day, Ross, like anything else, it's all about execution at this stage, because I think all the right ingredients and the right, things are there. We just need to ensure that we are taking advantage of that and sort of create a secular trend here for why this sport is going to continue to increase in popularity and mind share.
And again, it's around not only getting the right players and the right coaches, right, but it's also having the right people around the business to actually make that a success. Max, you said the word disruptor earlier. The Major League Cricket has the real potential to be a disruptor to the English calendar in terms of the season that gets played. So we've got the 100, the Blast, the County Championship, etc. We saw Sunil Narine kind of leave finals day, right, the night before to come and play in the opening game. Didn't go particularly well for the LA Knight Riders, let's be fair. So maybe karma was at work there, who knows. But is that a sign of direction for the global game? And do you think that there's space enough for the calendar to offer kind of different parts to different players who are interested in, what is the same game, but ultimately a different competition?
I think that's a great point, Ross. I think the challenge is going to be the cricketing calendar. If you take a look at it on an annual basis, is getting crowded. Okay. And I think there is, and first of all, I want to acknowledge that ICC has been doing a very good job on figuring out how to keep this calendar as sane as possible. But their job is only getting harder because, like, the MLC in the US and other leagues around the world are happening, and different formats and different things are all coming together. I think the ICC has a real opportunity to take a step back and say, like, hey, here is the calendar for the year. And ideally there are no overlaps, but I think that's going to be impossible given that, like, summer in certain parts of the world is the same 3 months or same 4 mons, right? And everybody's going to vie for a portion of that time frame kind of thing. So
about 1 week in this country.
But to the extent that we can sort of manage the calendar so that we minimize the overlap and we minimize the conflict, and we think about, like, hey, not just from the franchise perspective and the team's perspective, but also from the players' perspective and the coaching staff perspective, and set up some guidelines and rules about, like, what can be done so that the sport can thrive, even if there is a conflict where, like, 2 tournaments need to happen at a similar time or whatever it is. Because to me, it's all about, if you can plan for it properly, then it's fine. right?
Yeah.
If you can't plan for it, and then suddenly something shows up here or something shows up there, and a player is confused about whether I should go here or there, or player signs up for one thing and then they get called by some other cricket board for something else kind of thing. It's those kinds of activities that make it harder to navigate and manage through kind of thing. So thinking about the calendar, being thoughtful about that, and thinking about the rules and regulations in a way that is conducive both for players as well as for the teams is where I would request the ICC to continue doing a great job.
And I think on the ICC front, I think they've been accused on more than one occasion of kind of being asleep at the wheel, right? While the franchise cricket has kind of gone, actually, do you know what? There's a real big opportunity here. And I think it's really, really difficult to control that by kind of setting out, oh no, the horse is already bolted, right? That we've already got all of these leagues around. Now it is that bit around how do you safeguard players and how do you start to go, right, what is the right thing to do? So we're already seeing Test cricket kind of, suffering at the hands of franchise cricket. Look at the South Africa players this week announcing that they're going to send a depleted squad to play against New Zealand because actually they want to protect their players for South Africa 2020 competition, right? Because that is the bit that's bringing in their money. So I think, it's a tremendous challenge the ICC has. And then there's also the part around where the investors come from. And this is the part around, say, the Super Kings or the Knight Riders, all this kind of stuff. They are owning clubs in different countries or franchises in different countries, which is going to end up giving them far greater control, or maybe similar levels of control, to the nations that players play for, right? That is a difficult thing to manage, I think, moving forward.
I think that's a difficult thing to manage, and that's why I think it is as much as we talk about ICC quite a bit kind of thing, I think ICC, the national boards of cricket in all of these countries, and the sort of the private franchises kind of thing, they all need to somehow figure out how they're going to work together collaboratively kind of thing, right? Because it's easy to say hey, let me focus on what I'm doing and let me ignore the other things kind of thing. But at the end of the day, these things all need to come together because the player is a single player at the end of the day, right? It's not like you can easily clone them 5 times and say hey, go play in 5 different places, right? So you have to keep the players in mind, and as well as what all of these different bodies and different teams or franchises are all thinking about. And it's a very complex problem. But I think like anything else, hey, put the right minds to it with the right intent, and we can sort of be a lot better at this than where we are.
Yeah, I think people would be very scared if there was multiple Heinrich Klaarsens and you were a spin bowler.
Yeah, but I mean that's another example, isn't it? Heinrich Klaassen of the compacted calendar just had to leave the Oval Invincibles and a shot at winning the most prestigious short format tournament going, obviously. I mean,
but also remember there's only no matter how fit you are, physically fit you are, there's only so much you can sort of play in any given time frame at that level, which is really world-class level kind of thing. And you have to keep that in mind as well, because everything, you want the players to have a great experience, because that's when they're going to be doing their best work, right? You want to give them the right environment for that. And by sort of overusing them, let's say, because there's all these tournaments that are happening at different times kind of thing, you're sort of you are not optimizing for what the potential is truly.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I mean, it's been really, really enjoyable talking to you, Soma, and very, very interesting to get your insight and a bit of behind the scenes, I suppose, on how everything's going. But we just have one final question, hopefully a little bit more lighthearted, and hopefully not throwing you under the bus. But I realise you do already have a team, so it's a bit of a harsh one. You don't strike me as the kind of owner who wants to go out there and pick the side. But is there one player that you would absolutely love to see turn out for the Orcas in the next few years? If availability and drafting was no object.
I think the first thing I would say, Max, is I think we are in an incredibly fortunate position that we want a lot more than one player back playing for Seattle Orcas kind of thing, right? You guys mentioned Heinrich Klaassen, right? We had QDK, we had Imad Wasim, we had Wayne Parnell, we had Harmeet Singh, we had Shehan Jaysurya. I can just go down the list of players that I think are absolutely fantastic players. They came together really well for us as a team, and there is no reason why we wouldn't want a lot of them back in the team. Okay. Now, to be clear, and you rightly, either you read up or you know enough about me, kind of thing. I'm not the guy who's going to make the decision on hey, which player should come back or which player shouldn't come back. We got a fantastic, what I call a coaching staff and analysts that are going to help figure out what there is, kind of thing. So to me, I'm just going to trust what they're doing. But as a fan, I can tell you, we had some great players, and there is no reason why we wouldn't want a number of them back, assuming it can work for their calendar and they are interested in coming back to play for Seattle Orcas and for the MLC.
That was an absolute masterclass in the diplomatic response.
Very
that was.
diplomatic.
And I tell you, you say that we've done a research on you from an owner's perspective in franchises. It is very clear when you watch the IPL draft auction, or the auction there, that the owners do have a big hand to play in some of those pieces. But yeah, I think as you said,
I'll tell you, one of the things that we found is important for us is create a process, follow the process, and trust the process.
Someone's a Mahendra Singh Dhoni fan.
Yes. But I'll tell you though, it's not enough to just talk about it. You have to practice that. As much as I may have a lot of thoughts about hey, I really like this player, I want this player, I'm not the best person to make the decision. You got a set of coaching staff and a set of analysts to help you with that. Just trust them, right, to do the right thing. And tell them what principles you are looking for, but beyond that, empower them to do it, right? So we are really focused on building that culture in Seattle Orcas and have the owners be sitting on the back and not in the front.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean that. I mean, if I were judging it, I'd say that's a perfect answer.
Thank you. We are learning as well. So, and I'm sure we are making mistakes and we are learning. But certain things that we are trying to sort of make sure that they are fundamental principles in terms of how we think about and operate Seattle Orcas.
Amazing. Well, Soma, thanks ever so much for joining the show. It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. And we will look forward to seeing how the Seattle Orcas do next year and how Major League Cricket progresses over the next coming years. Best of luck.
Thank you, Ross and Max, for having me again on this show, kind of thing. It's been a fun conversation. And thank you for all the support and the best wishes. We do need that as we start planning for season 2.
Love it. Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely.
Bye. Thank you.
For coming.
Bye-bye.